For more on all of this, we turn to Gabriel Debenedetti, national political reporter for Politico. Gabe, good morning.
Good morning.
So let's start first with the year ahead. How emboldened does this White House feel? We know Republicans in Congress have their concerns about the elections.
Yes, absolutely. There's a little bit of a mix here. The White House certainly feels pretty emboldened, particularly after passing the tax reform bill. They were really concerned that they were going to enter this new year without having passed any of their signature legislation. That hasn't happened. So they still have the majority in all the House and in the Senate. They still have the White House. They want to try and get things done. But yeah, the midterms are looming and they have to figure out, well, what they actually want to get done now.
Well, let's talk about that tax bill. Marco Rubio came out recently and said that the bill probably went too far in helping corporations. You've seen lines of people trying to get ahead on their property taxes this year. Is there going to be political blowback on this next year?
Let's put it this way. I would be pretty surprised if that line from Marco Rubio were not in all sorts of Democratic ads very soon. So Democrats are on offense over this tax bill, which is something that a lot of Republicans didn't expect at all. They expected to not be talking about it at all at this point. It's not a popular plan at all. So Republicans really do need to get out there and try to explain it more to the American people. They haven't done that yet, and Democrats are trying to take this over and say, look, Republicans are trying to make life easier for corporations. They're not trying to make life easier for you, and that's a case that Republicans have to counter.
Part of the reason the tax bill was passed so quickly is because there was an understanding that, hey, you don't pass landmark legislation in an election year. And yet the White House is talking about things like an infrastructure bill. How feasible is that?
Well, I think it would have been a lot more feasible if they had tried this first and tried to get Democrats on board a year ago. Now there's a lot of Democrats who are essentially saying, you know, we're not going to work with the White House on anything because we don't trust them at this point. A lot of Democrats think that when the White House talks about infrastructure, they're really talking about the border wall and things like that, projects that Democrats are simply not going to agree with. And now that the election is looming, it's true, there's just not that much will for the parties to work together on things.
The president raises eyebrows almost on a daily basis with his tweets. And this time it was a spontaneous interview with the New York Times at his golf course with no aides present, which is pretty unusual. But one of the things he says that really stuck out was that he says, I've been soft on China. You think that's going to change?
Well, that's certainly something that he's been talking about for a long time. It was a staple of his stump speech when he was running for president last year. And if he does decide to go after China, at least as far as trade goes, this would likely be a look that for his base, you know, something that he's been talking to his base voters about, industrial voters in Pennsylvania and Ohio, people who think that Chinese steel in particular has been impacting them. That said, we don't know what this is actually going to look like or if there's actually going to be any substance behind this, but we'll see.
Speaking of things we don't know about, in that same interview, the president said, speaking of the Mueller investigation, there's been no collusion, but I think he's going to be fair. What is your reading of this and the Mueller investigation writ large?
Well, that was a pretty interesting thing for him to say because that's actually a different line than what a lot of Republicans have been saying. You have Republicans across Capitol Hill and some in the White House already essentially trying to discredit Mueller and saying, don't worry about this investigation. They're trying to poison the well here so that Republicans all over the country essentially don't believe whatever comes out eventually. But for Trump to say this is a little bit of a different line. Maybe he feels like he has to say it because, of course, you got to say something like that. You got to say that it's going to be fair. But it was a really interesting change of tack for him.
He is nothing if not unpredictable.
That's for sure.
Gabe Debenedetti.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.